So today we're going to be building a key rack slash shelf. It's going to be fairly small. It's going to be 24 inches long, and it's going to be about 7 to 8 inches in height, I guess we'll say, with about a 5-inch shelf on top with a lip. And we're going to be putting some little triangle type pieces on the edges just to give it a little fancy look. So this is going to be a fairly simple, easy project, smaller project, but it's part of a bigger project for a client that we're building a bunch of stuff for right now. So we're building this also. Like I said, this is going to be all poplar. We're going to be using 4/4 lumber only for this, and like I said, everything's going to be 100% poplar. And we're just going to kind of lay it out right now how we kind of want to look. And first thing we obviously got to do with all projects is we have to mill our lumber up. The lumber's, it's fairly clean where I get it, but this lumber hasn't been milled up 100% yet. So we're going to get a straight edge, straight face, a flat face, and we're going to cut it a rough width and then the final length once we get ready to start assembling everything. So right now we're just going to go to the table saw. We're going to right into the thickness planer after that, just get down to the final thickness. And then we're going to cut a couple more pieces later just to the final width of the shelf. Because I don't want the shelf to be too deep because I don't want it too much of an overhang, because they are going to be putting some weight on this. So for this, we're going to be taking our regular blade out. We're going to be putting a dado stack in. And we're going to go with our widest stack here. It's going to be about just under an inch, about 3/4 of an inch. And a little, actually, I'm sorry, it's going to be almost an inch. So we'll have to mill the shelf up. And that's why I decided to use real lumber rather than plywood. Because plywood, once you have to kind of set your depth of your dado, and you can't really trim your wood down. You can't thickness plane it. So that's why this is good to use regular hardwoods or wood, regular lumber in general. It makes it a little easier, and you can kind of like get a real tight fit and have a little wiggle room for not mistakes, but just for variations of the thickness of the wood. Plywood, you can't run it through your planer, obviously. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to set our dado stack up. We're going to set our width to define pretty much the thickest dado we could cut without any spacers, and we're going to just run it through. Okay, so now we're just going to lay our shelf out where we want our shelf. The fence and table saw will obviously dictate that exactly, but we want to just get it laid out here. So we're going to mark our face and our edges here just to make sure that we have a good reference point. We're also going to be cutting this shelf top down a little bit. I don't want it to be as deep as it is right now. So when we're done setting up our dado stack, we'll cut that to the final width. So I don't want it to be too deep. It's going to be holding some weight, but it's not going to be holding big products in furniture. So we're just going to keep this simple. We're going to set our height here for our dado stack, and then we'll just run our board through. So you see here our shelf doesn't fit, so which is good. This is the benefit of not using plywood, because we could run this shelf through the thickness planer here to get it down to our final thickness here and get a nice tight fit. I don't want it to be too tight because the glue will expand it out a little bit, but I want it to be snug since this is helping hold the strength and also keeps it nice and 90 degree if it's snug. So, and you can play with it a little bit. We have a little bit of wiggle room here, but not much. So you can see it's held in place as is. And this is how the shelf is kind of going to look. So now we're going to put our regular blade back in, because now we're going to cut our top shelf to the final width. I don't want it to be too deep. It's look too big. And there's a couple things we're going to change as we go here, but we're just going to cut our shelf here. We're just going to put the regular blade back in. Always remember to unplug your saw when you're messing with this. As you can see there to the top of the screen here, I always unplug my table saw when I switch out blades, just to be on the safe side. So that's what we're doing. We're going to put our blade back in, put our saw back together, and then we're going to start cutting everything up and get everything set. We're going to put little triangle pieces on the end here on each edge. You'll see in a couple minutes. We'll cut that with a miter, and there's different ways you could do this. But here, like I said, we're going to cut our shelf to the final width. You know, when you also subtract the dado, it took almost about 1 inch off. So here now we're just going to cut our little triangle pieces on the end. We're going to have one on each end. We're going to be doing a bigger coat rack. It's going to be identical to this, but it's going to be a lot longer. It's going to be almost 6 feet long. So we're going to have multiple, we're going to have 3 of these triangle pieces. So we're just going to cut these. There's multiple ways you could do this. You could do it with the table saw. You could also do it with your miter saw and just kind of edge it out here and put it all together. And I'm making a little bit of, not a mistake, but I'm going to make a change here. So a lot of stuff with these triangle pieces at the end here will be different at the end. So we're going to have to take these off eventually, and we're going to make a little tweak to them to make them a little more nicer, a little fancier looking. I thought they looked kind of bland as they were. The client agreed to, so we're just going to make a change later, as you'll see. But right now we're just going to run a chamfer on each edge to soften them up and do our sanding. We're going to sand about the 120 grit. So here, this is kind of overkill. We're going to do here. We're going to, I didn't need to do this. Ultimately, but it's a good layout if you're not going to be putting weight on these. So what I'm doing, I'm going to measure 16 inches from the end here where the triangle pieces are. We have to subtract that, and also space for where we're going to put in our hooks. So we're going to be putting, we're going to mark our 16 in our center, which that's where your studs are going to be, 16 on center. So we're trying to just lay this out, and we're going to put some holes in the back. So we could just kind of lay hooks, or not hooks, but like put screws in the studs and kind of just put these on top. But it ended up didn't do it that way. We ended up just kind of screwing right through. The client just said, you know, just make it real strong, because that kind of gave a little wiggle room where it could move a little bit. So this is kind of overkill, but it's another option. If they want to change, we can fill those holes and use these and just put like little screws, because with the little our forcer bit here, we're going to use a 3/8 forcer bit here, as you can see, that will hold the head of a screw. So if you just kind of put a screw in the stud, kind of just lay these on top, almost like a French cleat in a way. But it just wasn't tight, so we decided to go a different route. So here we're just going to, now after we did our dry fitting, we know everything's good. We're going to glue everything up now, and we're going to put our shelf in. We're going to put our little triangle pieces on, tighten them up, clamps, let them sit for a little bit. We're also going to be holding them with brad nails, and we're eventually going to tighten up with screws, little trim head screws from behind. So those screws will be shown even from the top. We're just going to be using brad nails and glue. Okay, so after we got everything pretty much assembled and sanded, we decided that we're going to make a change to the little triangle piece on the inside to kind of knock them out, which kind of sucked, but I was able to, get them nice and smooth and sand it out and just get the brad nails out. I was only holding it in with two brad nails and two screws from the back, so the screws were simple to come out, and then the tap the glue out and just kind of clean it up. So now we're just going to, what we're going to do, we're just going to put like a little, almost like a circular angle on the center of these triangle pieces to give a little fancy look, almost like an old school furniture look, and then we'll re-chamfer out the edges to make it look real fancy. So that's what we're doing here. We're just going to use our sander here. I didn't want to use the rattle table for this because these pieces are pretty small. I just didn't feel like it was I don't know. I just always feel a little nervous about using a rattle table with small pieces like this, and also it just wasn't really worth it. And that's it. So we just kind of did that we were able just to brad nail screw it back in. So now we're going to be staining on everything. So like I said, this is part of a bigger order also. So what we're doing here, we're just going to stain this all special walnut. We're using Minwax. That's what the client requested. And we're just going to, like I said, we're going to stain it. We're going to finish it all with Armored Seal polyurethane. And that's pretty much it. And then we're going to install the hooks at the end. But right now we're just going to get everything kind of finished up. And we're getting towards the end of this project. It's a pretty simple, easy project. Didn't overcomplicate things. Kept it nice and simple for the most part. You could do this with minimal tools, essentially. And just get a nice clean shelf, and it matches everything else we're putting in. You can see the little bench in the background there, and also a big coat rack. And we also built some other pieces for them also that we also put in for this client. So it's a pretty big project, and this is one of the smaller parts of it, but it's a cool little project to build. And now my wife wants one too, so I'm going to have to build something similar for my wife for our house. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to put the polyurethane on. We're going to sand in between coats and let this dry, and then we'll put the hooks on. So what I'm doing here for these tiny little hooks, these are, like I said, just going to be for keys and dog leashes and things. We're just going to space these out. We're going to space them out about 1.5 inches between each hook. That's how the math came out. We're going to put 10 hooks in, and we're just going to get our height for where we're going to put them. Use our combination square here, and I use that for pretty much everything. It's one of my most valuable tools are my combination squares. So we're just going to kind of lay this out, and we're just going to take a little center punch eventually after we get everything kind of laid out where we're going to go. And unfortunately, we have to kind of get our eraser and erase this and kind of do a light sanding over some of these pencil marks, even though the hooks will cover most of it, but you will be able to see it if you look close. I'm trying to keep the pencil light as possible so you can bear to see. So we will have to clean this up. Just keep that in mind. Obviously, you have to do this at the end, so you really couldn't do anything about that. You don't want to just put hooks anywhere. You want to have them kind of laid out in uniform. So like I said, we're going to use a center punch here. That way we don't have to pre-drill. These are real small screws, and this is softer wood, so we don't have to really worry about that. So we're just going to use a center punch here, mark where we're going to put each one, and then we're going to lay these these little key hooks out, and then we're just going to lightly screw them in, not high pressure, just real slow. We don't want to split anything. These screws are real small, so we can't really split anything, but we're just going to lay these out, put them on, and that's pretty much it. This order will be done. Like I said, this is part of a bigger order. We will be installing everything, and that will be in a separate video with the coat rack. It's similar to this, almost identical. It's a lot bigger, a little harder to do since it's so much bigger. It's almost 6 feet long. It's about 8 inches in height, so it's a little bigger, a little more heavy, a little bigger top shelf and everything. So it's the same concept. So that's what we're doing here. We're just going to lay our keys out, and that's it. And pretty much this order is kind of done here. Hope you learned some things here. Give me some recommendations if you see things I could do better. Obviously, I had a bandsaw. Those little triangle shelves have been a little easier to fix, cut out. But that's about it. So we're done. Everything's installed. Client loved it, and thanks for watching.